Hey there, welcome to episode 7 of The Shavin Show, where we connect the dots between tech, startups, business, and society, and today is going to be a conversation with Ankur Nagpal. He was the founder of Teachable, a course creation platform which sold for a reported $250 million. And now he's on to his next one with Carry, which is an all-in-one personal finance startup. We'll get into the weeds of exactly what that means inside the episode. But we also talk about being a second-time founder, how selling his first company led him to the finance questions that drove him to start his second company. We'll talk about how the New York tech ecosystem has changed over the past decade. It's a wide-ranging and fun conversation. Hope you enjoy it. If you aren't already, please subscribe wherever you are: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. And if we're not on your favorite podcast platform, find me online, shoot me a message. We'll want to be there. With that, hope you enjoy the show. Super excited for this conversation because I think there's a couple iterations of Earth spin changing here with Ankur, who is the founder of Teachable, which he sold for a reported, what was it, $250?
Something like that.
Something like that. And then you're currently the founder CEO of your latest venture, Carry.
Yep.
You're an investor through Vibe Capital, your own fund. So there's a lot of different contexts that we'll get through. We'll talk through your journey. Let's start with some context setting, though. I'll summarize, from the perspective of Teachable and Vibe Capital. Teachable, which we'll talk about for sure, but basically a course creation platform targeted at creators and builders. Vibe Capital, you're doing early stage investing. We'll get through more details. Give us the context. What is Carry today? You've raised about $10 million for the latest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The vision behind Carry. So at Teachable, we helped a lot of business owners make money online for the first time, a lot of them first-time creators. With Carry, we're thinking hard about how can we help these business owners actually build wealth. Turns out one of the best ways of helping people build wealth is by helping them save on taxes. So the platform really, it's a all-in-one solution for business owners to grow their wealth by saving money on taxes.
When you decided to start this, there's something in you that I want to see if is a realization you've had. Teachable, you started at a time when Udemy, Coursera, Kajabi were all, kind of on their rise too. Carry in a lot of ways is a unique solution, but there's a bunch of fintech products and wealth management products and financial advisory products. Do you like competition pain? Is that a thing that you almost...
I think competition is good because it validates that there's a market for it. I think the biggest risk, most startups, it's a famous saying, most startups die because of suicide versus being killed by someone else. So competition is fine. I think when you're building a startup, it's so hard that if you mess up, it's unlikely because of your competition.
Right. There's so many other obstacles in the way.
But the catalyst for Carry was while I was selling my company, I knew nothing. I'm an immigrant. I didn't grow up in America. I knew nothing about the financial system here. For the first time, I hired lawyers and accountants and all these pretty expensive consultants to structure my acquisition. And it blew my mind about how...
This is during Teachable.
Yeah, how messed up our tax code is. Our tax code right now, it's almost a factor of privilege. If you come from enough money where you can pay someone to figure it out for you, you can save so much money. And to me, I'm there has to be a way of somewhat leveling the playing field, right? How can we allow normal people to kind of take advantage of all the benefits in the tax code? Can we actually productize it? And that's how...
Let's dive further into, I usually, kind of go more abstract first. Let's be more practical first, then we'll get abstract. Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about that product. I think a lot of founders face this when you're building something that has, let's say, both privileged class and a normal user, power users. One of the challenges is always, who do you build for in the early days? So if you're talking about helping business owners with wealth management, if you're talking about, though, also democratizing proper utilization of tax code, there's probably the founder dilemma of, do you build in those early days for people who can pay for your product? Do you build for people who you believe in the long-term benefit from your product? And, again, a lot of startup founders, I think, face that early. Talk about how you approach that in Carry, where in particular, even as you're talking about business owners and entrepreneurs, people who have their company acquired, is a very different audience than, let's say, someone who's making a salary but wants to lower their taxes.
Yep. So I kind of cheated the system and decided to build for the exact same customer as last time, right? I'm I already know this customer demographic well. So what does that look like? It's not the startup founder. It's more the small business owner. So it's someone that could be a creator, that could be a consultant. They, typically, they're still net privilege. I would say making at least $80,000 a year all the way to a few $100,000. So they're still privileged, but not, millions of dollars a year or whatever. But it's the exact same demographic. And it is, what America is built on, the true small business owner.
Do you think, do you already know where you want to go once you successfully, depending on your level of positive founder delusion, once you successfully capture all of that market, do you say, great, I'm going to go up market or down market from there? Because I can see either one, right? You could say, great, my products are for those who have assets, who can invest, who want tools and maybe want to move away from using services or professional services, or maybe you want to add a lot more. I think you have some kind of professional services as part of a premium tier, or do you go down market and say, hey, a lot of the best practices, the tools can be for the Main Street customer?
Yeah, so I think a company that really inspires us quite a bit is Schwab, and Schwab has been around for a while, but compared to a lot of the banks, they're actually a relatively young company, 1975 or whatever. But they built a financial institution from the ground up. And when I think about who we want to be like, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab are sort of the people we look at as our long-term competition. We think taxes are an edge is how we get there by helping people be smarter about taxes. But we really want to build a financial institution from the ground up, except, it's a painful process and takes at least tens of years. But that's our long-term goal.
Well, and one of the things that comes as a challenge with that, I've gotten your marketing for since it was called something else a while ago, right?
It's called Ocho until we were almost sued out of existence.
Oh, yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
Let's hear that real quick. So what happened there?
Apparently, there was another company that had the Ocho trademark for insurance. We were financial services. We could have fought this, but it's like, I don't know, we had a few $100,000 in ARR. Do I really want to spend time fighting a lawsuit versus just changing our name and, getting back to work? So.
And you have carry.com, right?
We have carry.com.
How much
have ocho.com. I have signed very, very strict paperwork. I think I can't reveal it, but...
Was it $1.8 million?
Yeah, so if you guys saw friend.com was bought for $1.8 million, let me say I felt very good about our purchase price after reading how insane that was.
Which, though, people don't realize a lot of these... So friend.com, for those who don't know, is like an AI pendant, and the founder admitted on Twitter that he's paid $1.8, but that's usually structured in some form or shape, so that's not necessarily $1.8 million immediately going to the seller. How important was it for you in that moment to get that .com?
So my only rule was what we spend on this, has to, one, we have to have at least enough revenue where the purchase price has to be less than our ARR, which is a low bar, right? But it's at the very least, that's what it should be. Secondly, again, we could have structured it in all kinds of fancy ways. We decided to pay cash outright because we were about to raise a round, and it was low single-digit percentage of our round. So it's it felt fine. And right now, I'd rather keep my cash in treasuries earning 5% or whatever, because you'll pay more if you pay over a period of time.
Right. Do you support founders in their domain discovering journey when you're investing out of Vibe Capital? Do you think when you put an initial, what check sizes are you typically writing?
Yeah, so Vibe Capital I ran right when I sold Teachable. I've almost stopped investing now just because I found it impossible to be an early stage founder.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. But we, the second fund was $70 million, and we were investing anywhere from $200K to $4 million.
And so, that is enough capital that a founder could get .com dreams and decide brand is so important, I want to make that my first purchase. Are you a supportive investor of that moment or not?
I think it is circumstantial. I do believe it is easy to get an ROI from a domain purchase. Doing it kind of pre-product market fit is a different kind of ballsy, which I don't know if I love. But for us, for instance, right, we're a financial institution. The .com helped people increase their trust, which led to more deposits on platforms. So it's not hard for us to get an ROI.
Yeah, anything trust-based for agencies, trust-based career management. Yep. We went for that .com when we realized, hey, we think this is the long term. It's also generic enough, Carrie, that if you were pretty certain, I think, on what you were building as a second-time founder, but for founders who are trying to discover it, the more usable that domain is as you put in those early days. So let's talk for moment. When I looked at the landing page recently, this whole idea of the financial institution became very apparent to me. I'm looking at a page that has a lot of features. And the way I think about it as a startup junkie and a nerd around all this stuff is I know all the startups that are competing with your features. Some of them are much further along, like the robo-advisors. Some of them are exchanges. You have products that are simply tools and net worth tracking, kind of things. Again, you have a little bit of, it sounds like a premium tier where people get professional services. So you are competing in a way where you did not build one thing to start, or maybe you did and we'll get to where you are today. But you have a suite of products you've got to, as a founder, build across. Talk through the decision to be, kind of a portfolio of things rather than one, which happens a lot, I'd say, in B2B SaaS, but not as much in consumer. Which I consider you consumer. Most of these people are doing the personal finances.
Consumer, prosumer, a little bit, right? Yeah, right.
And every one of the features you build is really complicated.
Yep. So the one thing we do better than anyone else is a very specific type of account called a solo 401k. That is where we're the clear market leader, which is a one-person retirement plan that is super advantage. If you don't have any full-time employees, so potentially anyone who's
using
free agent, right? Yeah.
Or free agent. So consultant, course creator, your former customers
anyone that doesn't have a full-time employee, you can basically get a tax deduction of up to $69,000 every single year. And because it's a one-person 401k, you can invest it however you want. You can invest it in startups, crypto. There's no taxes, obviously, on the way through because, it's a retirement account. You could potentially do the whole thing as a Roth contribution and never pay taxes at all.
Is it a little that Peter Thiel thing?
Yeah. So it's an amazingly powerful account. And that was our wedge. So we're like, let's start by building the best product for this type of account. It's sort of niche, so no one else went as deep as we do.
That's what I was going to, yeah.
But that we use that and everything else came.
Are you also building the financial rails there? Or are you using like a financial services partner to like service the...
Basically both, right? Short term, we're using a brokerage, the service company, but in fintech, everything is still really hard. Like you have to be...
How hard? We talk about, let's start with the solo 401k and we'll get to other stuff. But when you're building this for V1, how long has it been since you started?
It will be 2 years.
So 2 years is still in this phase where I think like you can consciously decide to build at this point or to continue to partner and buy. So walk through a little bit of the nitty gritty there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll be honest, like I underestimated how painful fintech would be entirely, right? Like compared to there's just... I thought you'd be building on top of providers like Stripe, but actually every one of your providers actually sucks. And you're like the entire institution, like you'd be amazed at how much stuff works on paper forms on the back end. So we're like designing, like we thought we'd be building cool financial technology. Instead, we're building software to make it look like someone signed a PDF, right? It's just, it's kind of insane. But yeah, the regulatory nature is what makes it really, really hard. So even though you use third-party, tech providers, you have to either be a broker-dealer or a registered investment advisor to do anything, usually both, which means you have the SEC and FINRA regulating you. Because we do taxes, we have the IRS looking at a bunch of stuff. Because we're setting up employment plans, it's actually the Department of Labor looks at a bunch of stuff. So I kind of joke we're on a mission to be regulated by every regulatory body in America. But just the nature of that makes it very, very hard to iterate and innovate fast.
And how much of your decision to be building, I'm going to guess you're building like 70% of how much you could build versus buying or partnering. I don't know if that's right, but let's go with that number because the question will still work no matter what it ends up being. You're a second-time founder who's made money. You are well-connected in kind of the tech ecosystem. Do you feel a lot more ability to say, okay, I can spend these early years doing things I wouldn't if you can feel the first-time founder in yourself almost making a different choice? Is that tangible to you?
So I think I'll tell you what's easier as a second-time founder. I think fundraising is substantially easier as a second-time founder. Hiring people is substantially easier as a second-time founder. What is not substantially easier is true product market fit. If anything, people can bullshit you into thinking you have product market fit.
You can essentially pay your way to your first users,
Correct. So we kind of had that where early on we got a bunch of customers and we felt like, wow, people love what we have. Then we had like just this period of quiet in between where we had to actually make the product good. And then finally, the product got good enough.
What was the product back when you had those? I assume it wasn't solo 401k?
It was still solo 401k, but it was just like very hacked together. Like we just built very, very little. Eventually, we just had to put in the hard work of doing it right. But yeah, as a second-time founder, product market fit is almost as hard. Everything else is much easier.
And by the way, that was going to be one of my questions is, people talk about what gets easier as a second-time founder, and then there's stuff that just does not get easier. Might be even some stuff that gets harder. We'll get to that. So back to solo 401k as like the anchor product. Just for the sake of the audience, talk through a few of the other things that you're building as part of that product portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. So our overall mission, right, bigger term mission is like, how can we help people figure out what to do to save on taxes, implement those strategies, of which solo 401k is one of them, and file their tax return. That's the 10-year sort of vision. we have a service that does that whole thing for them. So back, where a business owner can come to us, say, hey, just do this whole thing for me. That's a services business. And that's something we're doing kind of on the side just because the R&D helps us learn.
Also, I think you tell me if this doesn't feel true to you, but a lot of people actually misunderstand how much successful tech companies also have a very substantial professional services arm, usually again in B2B SaaS versus consumer. But I assume actually there's like decent amounts of money we made by, again, it could be like tier based.
Of course, there's a lot of money to be,
you don't think of it as being as valuable?
I don't want to build the world's largest tax firm, is what it comes down to, right? So
would you hate yourself though if you did? That'd be pretty,
It would be. It's just that when I look at, it's like existentially, why am I doing this?
Yeah,
I also want to build something cool, and building a giant tax firm is just not that exciting to me.
Yeah, totally. So go through more of what else is part of the
and then, so after solo 401ks, we had a lot of people wanting to do IRAs and regular retirement accounts. Something we've worked very hard to do is trying to be asset agnostic. So from your retirement account, you can invest in stocks, ETFs, all the normal stuff, but also startups, real estate from the same place. Most providers do one or the other. And something like that you would think is easy, but it's actually a multi-year project to figure out how to do it well.
And are you doing it today, though, kind of manually in the back end, smoke and mirrors on the product side?
So right now we're doing it with a bunch of third-party providers, but something that's been apparent to me is the more pain we absorb, the more delightful a customer experience we can make it. So if we stitch together a bunch of third-party providers, it's kind of a shitty customer experience. If we go full stack, we become a trust company, we become a broker-dealer, we build our own rails for everything, we can actually make it feel like magic. But that obviously takes years.
Let's zoom out of Carey for a little bit and get a little abstract. Second-time founder, acquisition. I was going to ask you, and you answered that question of what's still hard the second time. But let's dig into that a little bit more. When you were setting up for your second journey, what was different from a surprising perspective, I guess? Again, when people go into that, they think, I have access to capital. Hiring is easier because you've proven that you can get to scale. Obviously from you've seen go-to-market playbooks, you've seen some product playbooks, but what's sticky still that you kind of in your head said, oh, this will be great this time, and actually no?
So I delusionally thought it would be kind of easy.
Yeah.
It's not. At some level, so I was 24 the first time around, 32.
When you started it.
Yeah, 32 the second time around. So I think you changed quite a bit as a person too. And as a result, the people are like, this tends to happen a lot. Like at Teachable, a lot of our early employees were around 24 years old. At Carey, a lot of our early employees were around 32. You just sort of tend to do that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be a lot easier the second time. It's still pretty hard. There are some things that are easier, but it's still pretty hard. The other thing and this is a good thing, was it reinforced the fact that like this is what I want to be doing, because I spent 2 years in between being like, oh, I hate startups. I was very burnt out by the end of Teachable. But then after 2 years, I was like, okay, I want to do this. And it reaffirmed that decision that even when things are tough, even when it sometimes feels like a grind, the ability to be in a shared space with a bunch of people you like, working towards a common goal, it's a pretty good way to live your life. So that was reinforcing.
You eventually needed that motivation back.
Yep.
When you're, kind of thinking about that you mentioned like the age difference in the company and who you're hiring. There's also the culture shift in the industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, you grew Teachable at a very different time in tech.
Yep.
And you started Carey right at like the end of an era, I think.
Yeah.
We're in a new era.
Yeah.
Talk about what you see as cultural differences, whether it's from a team perspective, whether it's from a, kind of what people are building, how they're building it, what feels different, not from you, but from everything around you.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the world changed quite a bit, but I think I guess one of the big differences is back in 2013, 2014, building a startup was considered kind of weird. Like it was the sort of thing that
niche industry,
very few people wanted to do. And then at some point along the way...
By the way, sorry, Teachable was in New York, right?
Yeah.
The way I tell people about this who are either young or weren't in tech for a while, like I graduated college in 2013. And, when I was thinking about New York and coming back, there were like 7 startups, and you guys were, one of the folks around. There was like Oscar Health. There was, I think people don't realize back then. Again, it wasn't just niche. It was really hard to raise any sort of funding whatsoever. The idea too of these the employees at these companies. To your point, it was a weird thing to join a startup versus go into consulting or banking, and the amount of outcomes you could look at and say, "Hey, I understand what my upside could be," was completely different than today.
Yep, absolutely. It was funny. A lot of founders, especially when the market was going crazy, would ask me like, "How did you decide which investors to take money from?" It's like anyone with a pulse that said yes. Like, are you kidding me? I took money from the most random people, from like, this person in the Philippines I'd never met who may be money laundering. Cool.
No, it's true. I mean, I had my first startup, right, 2014 for a couple of years. And even then, I think it changed in 2016, I think, is when things really took a different shift in the industry. And back then, it was everybody fighting for whatever they could get.
Yep. And then I think the pendulum swung so far in the other way, where you had a lot of people who did who didn't really care about working at a startup. For them, it was, I want a job, may as well be a startup. So this time around was very intentional in like properly vetting every single team member really wants to work at a startup.
How can you tell? I'd love to know.
A great way is we tell people they have to come into the office every day. That eliminates 90% of people right off the top, right? But also, like, if someone is interviewing at Facebook and with us, like, they probably don't really want to be at a startup.
Do you think that you've gotten good at hiring over the years?
I think, like, to the degree you can. Like, we're fast, and we accept the fact that 1 out of 5 decisions are wrong, and we just move quickly, right? I think a mistake a lot of founders make are they're stuck in this like paralysis of like, oh, I can't fully tell if this person is right. Just like hire them, see if it works out, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, because even if it was right and you could have tried more, it doesn't mean the next thing can't be just
I just
right
think
or
interviews
better.
are not a great way of figuring out if someone's going to be.
I tell people all the time, mostly when my clients are job searching and they're frustrated, and I go, don't forget, companies are also frustrated.
Yeah.
No one knows how to do this. This is not like a solved science whatsoever. From a second-time founder perspective, let's zoom back out. You were at some point investing.
Yep.
Talk about. Let's actually go to the acquisition first.
Yep.
So Teachable at that point, how many teammates did you have during the acquisition?
So when we sold the company, we were a little bit over 100.
Okay.
But we grew pretty fast after. We were close to 200 when I stepped back.
Got it. Talk about let's call it 6 months preceding acquisition.
Yep.
Was that a clear pathway? Was that intentional? How did it feel leading up to that moment?
So we were not looking to sell the company. We were at about 20 million in ARR, growing roughly doubling year over year.
Oh, wow.
But it was starting to feel hard. It was starting to feel like, wow, next year we're
Was that because of competitors? Was that because of market saturation?
A bunch of reasons, but the biggest reason is, at least I personally felt like our product was no longer good. And we can talk about how we got to that point and all that. But it just reached a point where our product was, in my opinion, not as good as it could be. And we had to, if we wanted to make it great, we would have to like just rip out the guts, do like a big rebuild, which was very tiring. I mean, we'd been there.
And for the audience's sake, this product essentially allows people, I'm going to just ramble guesses here, curriculum, member and student management for course creators, payments, marketing tools for those creators to market their courses. You guys also, you're one of the ones that does have a directory, no? Like
that was one of our experiments. It was never a big part of the business.
Okay, so you have
almost
a bunch
like
of those
Shopify
products.
for like digital products is like the easy way to think
So
about
what wasn't good about it?
It's just when you build software over a long period of time and it morphs into a different thing than what you started, and you have a lot of tech debt that you don't pay off infrequently, it just becomes this like, massive application that's very hard to iterate on. And just a lot of first time.
But growth was still pulling you through.
Correct. But growth, we were fighting. We were fighting very, very hard for that growth. It was not like customers were just coming. We just were running a very good acquisition engine. But it was starting to feel hard at the time. I was starting to get tired. And that's when the acquisition opportunity came inbound. It still, for about 4 days, felt like a very difficult decision. But after that, I'm like, you know what? Like, I like these people.
Was that a prior relationship, an introduction?
It was a private equity firm, General Atlantic. They reached out to us being like, hey, there's this company in Brazil. They're doing what you're doing. These are their numbers. Why don't you just meet them for dinner? Like, it's a blind date. They'll fly to New York. You'll go to dinner, see if you guys like each other. And after, we met once, met a couple of times, I trusted them. They're founders, same kind of mission, and it felt right. So we ended.
How long from that first dinner to close?
First dinner to close, it was August to March, but a large part of that was just legal paperwork. We went from in October, we had to sign term sheet.
Wow, okay, that was really quick.
It just we were all clueless. So I think we got taken for a ride by lawyers and just dragged that process on for too long.
You don't need to say in what direction or what quantity, but I'm curious, that reported number, is that very close or very far from the actual?
It's pretty close. I just had signed paperwork saying I would not personally reveal the number.
Yeah. Going through that process, because there's the after where I want to talk about, feeling burnt out from tech, but during, when you're selling it, when you're even close to the signature, go through the founder emotions. Obviously you're being distracted by lawyers and paperwork. Beyond that.
It's the hardest thing because you can't tell your team, right? There's maybe your CFO knows, but if I let other people in the team know, it would be chaotic. So you have this big secret. You're disappearing.
You need to grow so you can't ruin the acquisition.
Correct. You need to grow. You're disappearing for days at a time. Your team's all what is going on? I remember once I was in Brazil, and because they're in Brazil, I went over Thanksgiving because I didn't want it to be conspicuous or whatever. But Slack had this feature where it told you someone's time zone.
Yeah.
So my team is are you in Greenland? You're 2 hours east of here. What is 2 hours east of New York? But anyways, so you can't tell your team anything. It's very, very stressful because it's such a big swing whether you sell your company for a life-changing amount of money or go back to doing this really hard thing for potentially an infinite amount of time. So you have to kind of balance your emotions through the whole thing.
Who was your most reliable person in that moment to be able to talk to and kind of level set yourself, if you had one?
My close friends, most of whom are not connected to, not founders, just life friends, people.
I think that's key in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because founders rely on founders. The problem is other founders usually have stress.
Yeah.
And so if you have to find the right way to, I don't mean it literally, but almost deposit, have somebody who can take some of it.
Yeah. But also in some ways, it was also it was very hard, blah, 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 but it was also very stimulating. I kind of woke up you're engaged, you're energized. So the only part that really dragged out is towards the end, we would have these all-day sessions at lawyers' offices where I wanted to blow my brains out. You're sitting in the same room for 14 hours. By the end of it, I'm trading away stuff. I'm just take it. Take whatever you want. Just get me out of here. Get me out of this room.
And then it happens. What's the first week after?
The other context set, right?
Oh, yeah.
So as this whole thing is going down, I'm finally guys, I kind of bluffed them a little where I'm from the time we started engaging to the end, our revenue went from 20 million ARR to 25. So I'm guys, if we don't get this done in the next 2 weeks, we're walking.
Yeah.
It was bullshit. I wouldn't have walked, but you had to just kind of move it along. And meanwhile, there were all these reports of this virus in China that's making its way over
when
here.
This was.
All of that.
Wow. So this was January, March?
By the time we got here, it was March, early March. And
jeez.
And finally, they came to New York. And this was the time shit was getting real. It was the time when Tom Hanks said he had COVID. I still remember that was a big day, right? NBA said they were going to stop playing games. And we were still kind of negotiating this. And we finally decided we'd lock ourselves in a room, and until we got the deal done, no one was going anywhere. Finally, we got the deal signed on a Thursday, which was the biggest stock market crash in history. At this point, the world was falling apart. We didn't know how to feel. Then Tuesday, we announced the deal, which then became the new biggest stock market crash in history. So it was the craziest time to sell, alternated between this is a really good time to sell, or this is a really bad time, because our business then doubled in the 3 months after.
Wow, yeah. So. Wow. What's it like being a post-acquisition founder?
It's great. A lot of people are oh, I felt so empty. I didn't know what to do. I had a blast. I got bored after a year and a half, but I had a blast. I traveled everywhere, got super deep into sports, and saw my family a lot more. It was awesome.
I'm going to scatter around a little bit. I'm curious, you built in courses. How do you view the industry you've left behind. Let me use a specific startup as an example. I think right now, like the most interesting player, you might correct me, is Maven, perhaps live cohort-based courses. And there are a few others that are now taking other approaches. And Kajabi is like off to the races in some form or shape. How do you evaluate the industry left behind? Do you look at some of them and go, hey, that's not going to work, and you're now in the peanut gallery? B, do you get involved? Are you kind of advising, talking to, being a friend to some of these folks? What's your relationship also to Teachable itself, actually?
I mean, I'm biased. I think the company I'm most closest to and most optimistic about is Circle. They were started by our head of growth and our head of product.
Oh, wow.
So
that must be super satisfying.
I was on the first check into them. I was an advisor and stuff. But I mean, they're growing really, really well and at a different scale. But I think what a lot of people
they're doing more community, or am I wrong to think
correct,
that way?
But I'm going to get to the point. I think a lot of people who do just courses realize your total market eventually starts feeling a little bit small. So you have to become a place for all types of digital products. So that's what Circle started with community. Now they do courses. Now they do live events. They do the whole sort of gamut of things. But the same thing with the email marketing tools. They're now offering products. The product tools are offering email marketing. So I think it's a great space. But eventually you have to do sort of everything. Because courses, for instance, I think courses have gotten smaller since 2021. Like if you look at a lot of the top creators, they're making less money with courses now. Also younger creators, right? Like 22-year-old kids that have a large audience, they're not selling courses. So courses have shrunk a little bit, but creators are still monetizing. So
why has that happened?
Like why
have courses shrunk?
I think these things come in waves, right? Like newsletters were not hot, now they're hot again. Like they come in waves up and down. I think the company that obviously has done great through the whole thing is like Shopify, like merch and stuff is kind of evergreen. But creator monetization keeps changing. And I think when you get into courses, it becomes a little bit too one-dimensional.
Jumping around a little bit more too, when you were investing, what about your journey influenced how you decided to put money into early stage founders?
Yeah, so I think investing was something that was really fun for a while because I wanted to stay involved. I wanted to be connected to startups, but I didn't want to work hard. And investing was a great way. You just, have a few phone calls, send some money. But I think I tended to look for founders that were like me. So I indexed a lot on people that kind of hacky, operated really fast. I almost always invested after some kind of metrics. It was a learning experience. I think initially there were a lot of things I got wrong about investing that I eventually think I figured out, but it took a while.
Said with love, was you investing as a founder like a ZERP era phenomenon in some ways, as in if in hindsight you could make that choice again, would you have gone, that was maybe educational but not useful?
I think I enjoyed investing a lot more because of the time we were in. You got so much positive reinforcement. Every company you invested in was worth 4 times more 3 months later. I'm like, this is the easiest job in the world. Like, this is awesome. So I think I will always invest in the future too. Probably not as a full-time job though.
Right. Okay, now, kind of coming back to the moment of Carry. So you're going through the acquisition. You're feeling all this pain. Let's talk from a structural perspective. What's something as a second-time founder you think now you nailed this time? That when you did decide, hey, it's time for me to get back in the game. I want to go. I need to get into an office every day. I want to build. What has just gone, from your perspective? Obviously, fun stuff is easier, right? Fundraising is easier, whatever. What have you done really, really well this time?
Honestly, as a startup founder, you get your ass kicked daily. I want to say almost nothing, but I think we've nailed culture a lot better. I think we've been intentional about the types of people we've brought on, and as a result, love the team. Think that part has been great. Structurally, this is kind of nerdy, but the way we've structured our equity, all of that stuff has been pretty good. With that
First and second-time founder, even second-time founders, if you're not thinking about that kind of stuff, you can make a mess that only becomes obvious sometimes in acquisition.
With that said, I generally still do think that as a second-time founder, you will just make different mistakes this time. If you want to get good at something, you do it hundreds of times. Doing something twice, that's not enough reps to truly master anything, in my opinion.
Right. If you think about, kind of the journey being a second-time founder, part of it must also be what translates industry-wise, go-to-market-wise, playbook-wise. obviously you're targeting some of the same customers, so some of that's obvious, right? Because you can kind of borrow communications, content marketing, your engagement.
Relationships.
Yeah. What else can you borrow that might feel unobvious to people from the outside, or what have you been borrowing from your time at Teachable?
So one of the biggest things that has helped me this time is the first time I don't know if insecure is the word, but you feel like you don't know anything, so you do things because other people told you to. And now I'm like, it, we're not going to do a lot of because some blog post said someone else does one-on-ones. If I don't want to and it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. So almost having more conviction in yourself, I think, is really good. You waste less time on things that don't matter.
It's almost like the catalyst energy you need to make a choice is lower.
Correct.
You can consult your like wise self instead of consulting a blog
Like
post.
there's a lot of like, we just I think on a lot of things we just move a lot faster because we don't do things because someone else said we should or whatever.
So go ahead in the back.
You talk about your second-time founder. You got a lot of things easier, but product market fit was like not the same thing. Was there something that was harder as a second-time founder where you had more bias and getting your product market fit was more difficult, or any of the other aspects of the business as second-time founder?
I don't think so. Like I still think net it is easier. Though there was a great quote I read where it's like the trick to being an effective second-time founder is to actually leverage the hype without believing it yourself, which I thought is kind of a great quote, right? So no, I think some of the things are as hard. I don't think anything is quite like harder. I will say something that can be harder, not for me, but for other people, is when you're older, sometimes the stakes feel higher, where if you're 21 years old and you do nothing for 2 years and make no money, it's fine. But if you're 37, have a family of 3, the pressure feels more. That's not my situation, so I feel fine, but I've heard that from other founders.
The other thing that I think can be harder, but this is obviously he started Care, so it's a different thing, but it relates to the product market fit thing. A lot of second-time founders, third-time founders that I interact with, it's when you're exploring the idea maze, like their decision of like their ability, it's kind of the same thing if you come from an industry where you can be skeptical more than you should be because you know so much. So as a founder, you know so much, and so you can almost accidentally talk yourself out of ideas and concepts because you can predict what's going to go wrong, and so it scares you out of what a first-time founder is naive about. So again, like for you had the idea and it made a lot of sense to go after, but a lot of second-time founders, I think, struggle with that, not wanting to touch the stove again and almost becoming a little too cautious. Any questions? Go for it.
Yeah, on that note of like age, if I heard correctly, you said you started at age 24. What were kind of like, apart from conviction, of course, who were some people, what were some resources, especially being an immigrant and moving to the United States, like got you onto that path, be it books, podcasts, YouTube, and then specifically people that kind of like steered you to where you ultimately are today?
Yep. So I was very fortunate. I moved to America when I was 17, went to college on the West Coast in Berkeley, stumbled into my first business when I was 18. I was interning at Amazon as a software engineer, hated my life, but it coincided with the launch of the Facebook platform, and I could build these silly little Facebook games and quizzes. And by the end of my freshman summer, I was making $20 a day or something. And that was the most significant money I've ever made because it taught me that you can do things on the internet and earn a living. And after that, I never had a job of any kind. But something that really helped me a lot is in that era between 19 and 20, living in the Bay Area, there are so many people that kind of met with me just because I was a young person, and like they got nothing out of it, but a lot, whether it's like Mark Andreessen, Naval Ravikant, like there are all these like big names of people that just were happy to like meet with someone young and doing things. So what I would tell people that are young is you have a short window where like your age will work very well for you.
You're innocent. Everyone thinks of you as a baby.
Correct. And everyone will be very generous
Do it
with
before
their...
you're bald.
Yeah. Everyone is very generous with their time. And with that said, I will say I don't know if it was a time or a place, but I feel like some of that doesn't exist anymore today.
No, it doesn't. Well, so the other thing that's changed a lot is the amount... like with the increase of the amount of content and the proliferation of these, let's call them elders, into blog posts, podcasts, brands, less people are, for virtuous reasons, are not available. There's more of this. There's probably 50x more generalized advice available, playbooks available. But to your point, this idea of the hand-to-hand, and people will say, no, if you move to San Francisco, it'll be there, or things like that. This is not true in the same way. Last question. Go for it.
Real quick, can you talk about like getting your first users, more specifically like Teachable, because you said Carrie, why not past relationships? Because obviously you got a big vision of hires in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So first user for both companies, and I'll probably do that if I ever start another company, was myself. I think it's very, very helpful to build a product you would personally use and need. So at Teachable, it was actually from my co-founder, Conrad, where he had courses on Udemy. He was the first user. But then after that, it was just pounding the pavement. Like I can show screenshots of my Gmail where I would send hundreds of cold emails, like copy paste, like bored out of my mind. But it was just like, then finally one of the people replied and he became our second customer. And for him, I like set everything up manually, did all the work. And we literally added one customer a month, I think initially. It was very, very slow. But
because it's a little bit different where you can't just jump on TikTok. It's not like a consumer social app. Like slightly.
No, I was begging people like, hey, please give us a chance.
So he's on Udemy. I want to guess on some of the things that like he wasn't being served by. Probably Udemy is a marketplace, so distracted on like cross-sell, where his courses amongst other courses. Udemy was already a little bit old, so probably like just like payments, payment rails, course management rails.
Lifetime value was the big issue, right? Like you worked to acquire
the community aspect,
and they were cross-sold some other stuff, and it had a bit of a reputation as a discount website.
Right,
and
that's huge.
But again, like startups, like luck also plays such a big role, right? When I started this, right, I literally just started this. 3 weeks later, Udemy announces they're changing the revenue share to take more. So they created anger and animosity with their customer base. So sometimes, like, right place, right time also definitely helps.
Yeah, just to wrap things up here, creators were a big thing for you, obviously at Teachable, have gone through kind of a journey in Silicon Valley over the past years. What's your take on the creator economy in 2024 and beyond?
I think the creator economy, it's here to stay. I personally think of it as like a subset of the business owner economy. Like if you look at this graph of the number of small businesses started in America, it climbed a lot during COVID. But a lot of other graphs like that fell back. This has kind of kept rising. So I do think the future is sort of, the independent business owner or whatever, of which creators are a big part of it. But I really think the bigger trend is, like we are moving back to a world of entrepreneurship where small business and independent business is going to be everywhere.
Is one of your kind of hypotheses, I lied about last question, so one of your hypotheses that like, because of the rise of AI, the individual, kind of founder or business owner with a freelance or AI-driven workforce is going to more be, kind of our density. Are you kind of thinking, because this positioning of solo 401k is really interesting. Obviously, again, because you're addressing the customer, it makes sense. You have this customer at Teachable, but in some ways, it's opinionated, right? Like a lot of 401k competitors of yours or products in fintech that use 401k as a wedge, use it as a wedge because they want to meet companies. And they literally build their like Wealthfront or Betterment, I think it was. Like, I think they built their 401k business so that they could force themselves into doors of companies and offer the rest of their services. So, you're viewing it a little bit differently. Is it because of the solo entrepreneur theory that, you're saying is a trend, but is it rising to your mind? Is the solo portion of your business eventually going to drop off in your mind in 2-3 years?
Mm-hmm. No, so I think we're going to keep doubling down on it because I think the future of even professional work is having a side hustle. It's having a gig on the side. So I think most people will have multiple income streams, some of which will be, freelancing, self-employment, Schedule C. So no, we're going to double down on it. In fact, there have been a lot of opportunities to go to the SMB space where we're turning that down for now.
Round of applause, Ankur. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.